so I think we should get started. Is everybody on the panel ready to roll?
Yeah.
I think I am.
All right, excellent. All right, well, my name is Beverly Bambury. I'm going to be moderating this event tonight and helping keep things rolling smoothly. I just wanted to share up front that that we are going to actually be giving away three beautiful parchment maps during our program here tonight. We are going to select that based on some people who've. What are you holding up? Oh, there it is. It's
Yeah,
going
hold it
into your
closer.
green
Okay,
screen.
so it's on
Yeah,
a
there you go.
plastic. This one is on a plastic sleeve.
Yeah,
Okay.
but they're cool and they're on really cool, nice paper and everything. So we're going to be giving
Yeah.
away a few of those.
Yeah, so it's yeah.
And yeah, there you go. And if
I
you
won't
are here for the, yeah, you can't win because you're on the panel. No.
I know.
The, one other cool thing we're going to do is at the end, if you stick with us to the end, we've got a coupon code for the Dragonwell Publishing Store, which is the actual publisher's storefront for the book. So if you've already bought the book, maybe you can use it to buy something else, or if you haven't yet, now you can get a discount. So hang out with us till the end, and Anna will share that coupon code with us. So that's it for me. I already said who I am, Beverly. I'm the publicist, I'm an assisting publicist for this book, and of course, I am doing this too. That's kind of all you need to know about me. Anna, why don't you introduce yourself? And I know you kind of had some special thank yous you wanted to do as well.
Yeah, so I'm Anna Kashina. I'm the author of Lacrimosa of Dana, and I'm very excited to be the author. So I have been writing novels here for a very long time and published 7 fantasy novels, which are roughly in this genre, but not exactly similar to this book. In my day job, I'm a biomedical scientist, and I think that accounts for being like very tedious in my research. And this kind of these qualities really helped me write this book. So I fell in love with this game. So, and this is why this book came about, roughly. So yeah, I kind of at the beginning of this panel, I wanted to say that there's a big team of people behind this project. So I wrote the book, but there are so many people who made it happen. And I mean, starting with, of course, Nihon Falcom, who wrote this beautiful game, and all these amazing people who really helped me and went above and beyond to make sure this book is the best it could ever be. So some of these people are on the panel. So Kaylin was my editor, and she kind of has been through with me through the whole process. And without her, this book wouldn't be the same. So Beverly was managing all the publicity for this project, and yeah, well, including all the crazies and like all the nervous breakdowns and everything.
Oh,
yeah. So
I always say being a publicist is part therapist. So there you go.
yeah, I really know this now. Yeah, Style Infinite is and Digital Emulas have been really amazing in like this amount of support. So they represent the IS community and IS fans, and I've never imagined this much support in any community. And like the amount of work they did for this behind the scenes, helping me promote also all the therapy sessions, all discussions of the book, and just really like being there and being enthusiastic about it and willingly and eagerly sharing all the information I needed on a very short notice, like all these like midnight conversations about what is Adolf's favorite food? I'm just making it up. Yes, like if you text at midnight, you will get an answer immediately, and it will be a qualified answer from a team of people. So, and there are many other people who are not even here. So people who designed the website, people who designed the trailer videos, people who did the beta reading and early critique of this book, which really shaped it. Like, so Kaylin got it not immediately, but after some other people have seen it. So there's another editor, copy editor, who was there after Kaylin. So it's really kind of, this list is really long. Most of these people are acknowledged in the book, but some people like the website designers are not. So I will find a way to acknowledge them all, but I just kind of wanted to say thank you. And this wouldn't be possible without this amazing team of people who really put their all into this project. So I really appreciate this. And of course, I'm really thankful to all the fans and people who are here today and people who have been tweeting and saying, yeah, this book had better be good. Or like, challenging me and like also saying how great it looks. So I just felt incredibly supported throughout this work, and this made it so much fun and so special that it's just like being here today took a very big team of people, and I really thank them all. Okay.
That's awesome. You're so kind. So, Lynn, why don't you tell us a little about you?
Okay. First of all, I just wanted to point out that we do not represent the youth community. We're just fans. Honestly, we're just a group of fans and enthusiasts.
You're a representative sample of these communities.
we're just a group of people who really like the series and everything that's been coming out. And so when we heard about the book, we were, and I say we because yes, it's a group of us, and we're so excited about the book. And I have finished reading the book, and it's amazing. Congratulations on the launch. So I guess hi everyone. I'm Limfinite, the producer of Digital MLS. I created the website digitalmls.com to spread awareness of Ys outside of Japan. I have a great support network, and our core team is scattered throughout Canada, US, Japan, and it's a pleasure to be here. So thank you for the invitation.
Kaylin, go for it.
I'm Kaylin Considine. I'm the editor that worked with Anna on this. I come from a background editing science fiction and fantasy, and we'll talk a little bit more about, approaching a novelization of a video game as we get into a panel. But Anna, I wanted to point something out to you. First time we spoke was a year ago today.
Oh, really?
I don't know if you know that. It was after our mutual friend introduced us, I went back and I looked through the emails because I was talking to someone about this, and I was like, yeah, it was about this time last year that we had first spoken about the project. So yeah, it was a year ago today.
That's our anniversary. We're celebrating.
Yeah. Well, it's the first anniversary, the paper anniversary. So that's very appropriate.
Yeah.
Perfect.
Next year will be leather.
Yeah.
Oh my.
Some hardbound books, leather-bound books.
Yeah.
Yeah, there you go.
Jeff, why don't you introduce yourself as well?
Me?
Yes.
Yes, you.
Okay. Well, I just making sure I heard everyone. Like I'm just some guy. My name is Jeff. I have translated several of the Ys games to English from Japanese. Several of them in just unofficial fan translation form, but I also did official translations of Ys 1 and 2 Chronicles, Ys the Oath and Felghana, and Ys Origin. And I also served as a consultant for NISA when they did the retranslation of Ys 8. And they also brought me in to consult as kind of a subject matter expert on Ys 9, mostly for making sure terminology was consistent from one game to the next. That's kind of my role in all this.
Very good. So so that's our panel for tonight. Sorry, I was looking ahead in my notes. So one of the things I know that we wanted to talk about, and several of the panelists want to talk about, and there's already questions in the Q&A, so I think this is one of the things people are really waiting to hear, is let's talk a little bit about your thoughts on the series and the game, and kind of why this one, that kind of thing. So Anna, I do want to start with you because you're kind of the origin of this whole thing. So why don't we go ahead and start with you on that?
I love adventure games with good stories, and from like the very first minutes of playing it, it was very obvious that this story is it's beyond any other story that I ever played. So it was really amazing experience. And then as I was playing it, just everything clicked. So every word the character said, like every action, I felt I could have written that. So it's like, yeah, that's exactly how it should be. So and then it kind of had this true note all the way from the beginning to the end. So when I finished this game, I just felt like, yeah, I can't give up this experience. I wanted to experience it again. So I played it a couple of more times, but then there's only so many times you can replay a game. And then I just felt like there has to be a book based on this game, right? So I started looking and there was nothing. And then I said, okay, and I could write a really good book based on this game, but this is crazy, right? So then I called up my agent and she said, no, it's not crazy. Authors do it all the time. And then after this, kind of the flood opened. I just made it happen because I had to. I think it's just kind of it's a feeling very similar to falling in love. So in my interviews for this release, I use this comparison a lot because when you feel in love, you just want to spend all your time with the object of your love, and then when you can also shape it and you can spend as much time as you want and get it to be exactly like you dream it to be. It's just really an amazing feeling. And then when it all works out, you know. And I have to also really credit the developers of the game because actually the story is kind of as perfect as I could ever imagine. So it was kind of, I think, this very kind of an instant match. And I think it was kind of, I felt like in many ways, I was meant to write this book. So I'm really glad that I got to do it.
That's really cool. Like it's kind of I'm not a writer, so I don't have that same creative urge that I guess, people like Anna have. So it always really amazes me when somebody talks about how inspiration hits. So thank you for that. So I'd be curious. I know, Kaylin, I think like me, you have not played any of these games, correct? So
I have not, no.
okay,
Um,
so I'm gonna skip you, but Lim and Jeff, why don't you talk a little bit about, well, I'm skipping me too. Why don't you talk a little about kind of what the East series means to you, just very briefly, and how you feel about this adaptation of East 8 specifically.
Well, do you want to go first, Lim?
Sure. I guess. Well, again, this is personal opinion and where uh,
Of course.
why I love the series. But when I first started looking into, I play a lot of video games, like a lot, and this series, um, it's based on one guy where he has a thirst for adventure. There's been other games that I love, like Final Fantasy, but most of them are completely separate, or The Legend of Zelda, where Link is a reincarnation. But this is based on one guy, and he loves adventure. So I love story, and many people play these series because it's very like action packed. It's very fast, and of course the music. And right now, probably everyone in the chat's just nodding because I said music. Um, but yeah, there is an overarching arching narrative that connects all the games together. Um, but Ys 8 is one of the most standalone games in the overall series. I mean, each game was developed so that you can jump in at any time and enjoy them, except for, I would say, East 2 that needs to be played after 1.
Right.
But for the most part, each game can be enjoyed as a standalone game. And if you are familiar with the past games, then there is a connected story as well. But 8 is the most standalone game, and I can't think of a better novelization to start with. Like this is perfect, for fantasy readers and for fans alike. And the when I finished Ys 8, like the story was amazing. Each character stood out. It was colorful, it was brilliant. And when I was done the game, I was like, I wish I could experience that again for the first time. But you can't until now. And this book really did it gave me and us that opportunity to revisit the island again. It was amazing. So yeah. Jeff.
Aw.
All right. I mean, for me, my first exposure to East was in 1990. There was a place back in South Carolina where I was originally from that rented out import systems, and you could actually rent Genesis games and the TurboGrafx, and that's also where I discovered the Neo Geo, my other great love. But I rented a TurboGrafx in East 1 and 2, and I absolutely was completely infatuated with it. I spent an entire weekend. I don't think I slept that entire weekend. I just spent the entire time playing East 1 and 2. I was like, this is like my new favorite thing in the world. And so I just became kind of obsessed with it. It just became, just this thing that I've followed through for years and years. And I've watched the series evolve, and it's, the way that the series has always, or rather I should say, has never been afraid of change, is something that I've kind of tried to take on board. It's just like the, being willing to accept that a series, that something I love is going to evolve and maybe even move past what I loved about it in the first place. But like when I first played East 7, I was like, this is a completely different take on, how this series feels, but it still feels like East to me. And then when I finally got to sit down and play East 8, I was like, oh, this is what they were going for in East 7 and
Falsetto.
yeah, that's Falsetto. Sorry, I'm conflating like the Japanese titles and the English titles in my head. So, but anyway, and then when I got to sit down and finally play it, I was like, this is fantastic. This is this is great because I never played it on the PSP, or sorry, the Vita. I only played it on the PS4 originally, and it was just kind of blew me away. I was like, okay, this is one of those examples, kind of like when people saw Legend of Zelda: Ocarina of Time in, what was it, 1998 when that came out, and I was like, oh, okay, this is what this series was building towards all this time, and it felt so good to me, and it kind of continued on the series tradition of just that sort of not super specific storytelling. It left enough blanks there to where fans could sort of fill in their own ideas for what this world was like, especially since since as fans know, like the world of East is kind of an alternate version of our modern, or rather our ancient history. And yeah, it's just something about that just really clicked with me. And yeah, like
That's very cool. So thank you guys. We could talk about what we love about the games, and I think given how many games there are, we could probably go on forever. So thanks for allowing the transition. So Anna, I know that you and Kaylin obviously had to deal with um turning this game into a book. So given that a book is not player driven like a game, you aren't making decisions the same way since it's not a choose your own adventure. What steps did you take with regards to pacing and structure? Like kind of what are some of the seeds of or not seeds, but some of the pieces of the puzzle and how it got to where it got?
Yeah, so for me it was kind of all in my head, and I could see how it works. But Kaylin is the one who really had to reel me in and kind of so actually make it work. So maybe Kaylin could comment to that.
Absolutely.
Sure. I mean, I will say, I generally as an editor, I work on non-novelizations, original stories. Novelizations come with challenges because, well, there's two primary ones. One is translating a visual medium into a written medium and taking away the component where in the video game, you don't need everything described to you. You're seeing it. In the book, you have to describe a lot of things. And especially in a game like this, that's, a very character driven story, but also a fantasy driven story where there are things that happen, just textbook in these games, certain things like clothing and armor, battle upgrades that we can't spend pages talking about that. It would be, I'm sure there's some people out there that would very much like to read it. But beyond that, even just the setting and the scenes, and I'll transition that to the next part, which is, as I had not played this game, and I think that was actually good because it gave me the ability to take a step back and say, I don't understand what's happening here because I've never seen this before. It's not a knock on Anna at all. It was just that, Anna's so familiar with this game. There's certain assumptions you're going to make. It's like, oh yes, and then the tree just shows up out of nowhere. And I'm going, well, wait, they were just sitting here looking at this. Was there did the tree, did it grow out of the ground? Was it just there was this and suddenly there's a tree here? We need to transition this a little bit better. So, it goes into one figuring out how much to describe and how much not to describe. We don't need a Tolkien-esque tome, explaining the recipe by which the scones were made and the temperature of the fire they were made over.
I mean, you could do that.
You
absolutely could do that.
Listen, there's always an audience for every scrap of detail you want to put in there. But this was a big book, even with all of the, the being careful of that. The other is, just understanding that things about this that I don't do. And this is something Anna and I talked a lot about was, how much of this do we want to make sure appeals to people that have ever read the book, and how much are we willing to kind of make the assumption that a lot of people reading this, for instance, know what color Adol's hair is. That was something when one of the first notes I made was, I was like, we've gotten very far into the book and I have no idea what this character looks like. And that's okay. But, I know he's going to be on the cover, so everyone will see him. But, we do need to describe certain things, and then there are certain things we don't need to describe as much. So it's hard going from a visual to a written medium. Plus, then you're able to give words to what the characters are thinking and doing. And, someone like Anna who knows and loves this game inside out is a very good person to do that. So, picking the areas where, hey, maybe the adult should be thinking about this here, or let's make sure we understand what Dana's, how she's feeling. That's another really important step in the process here. I will just say also that I kind of outed us a little bit by saying Anna and I first talked a year ago, which is not a very long turnaround time for a book, but because this was a novelization and we already had the story, we didn't have to spend too much time on the actual story. We could get down into the book. So that's why we were able to turn this around so quickly.
May I ask a question of you, Kaylin?
Can I just add something first? Sorry, because
sure.
I just wanted to say that it was really important to have an editor who hasn't played the game, because anybody who plays the game doesn't have those questions. And people, when they read, even if they think they know the game, I mean, it becomes really important. So what you show and what you don't show. And I also know that, in terms of turnaround time, it's actually really fast for a book. And again, a lot of it is to Kaylin's credit, because she just, without a flinch, took all our like short deadlines and just did it. No problem. You need this in 2 weeks, sure. Like 500 pages, 2 weeks, no problem.
It wasn't 2 weeks.
No, it wasn't. I'm
Their words are written
exaggerating.
in gold. So
Yeah. I also thought it was very interesting because a lot of early reviewers commented that, the book is very fast-paced and we're missing a lot of details and a lot of these side quests. So one reviewer who did a great review, but he was missing all these fighting scenes. He said, like, where's this 5-page fight scenes? Like,
and
so, and it turned out to be a pretty long book. So this is why part of the reason I'm writing the bonus material, but just to fit it all into a story that moves fast and has all the necessary things is kind of an enormous amount of work. And this largely falls on the editor, because I wrote like a 900-page draft, and we ended up
hardcore.
right. So you could have had a Tolkien trilogy, but you didn't, and that's like thanks to Kaylin. And sorry, Jeff, now you have a question.
No, it's okay. What was your
No.
question, Jeff?
Yeah,
absolutely. I was just kind of curious, like, as someone who had never experienced, the East series before, was there any particular part of the book, or like a scene or any part of Anna's writing that really stood out to you, or like that you had the most fun with editing?
Yeah, there were a few, and those are the ones where I would sit down with Anna and go like, okay, and this and this and this. So like the parts that had the most notes were the parts that I really enjoyed, because I wanted to make sure they came through really strongly. So to kind of half answer it, just for some background with like what I did here was, I got the draft from Anna. I read it. I made some notes, some questions and everything. And then I did a first round of just, high level, this is too wordy, this is not wordy enough, I'm confused about what's going on here. Then I got another draft back from Anna, and what I did was I found basically a giant compilation of all the cutscenes on YouTube and watched them. So that
YouTube is very handy for that, isn't it?
Yes, exactly. So that I could see what was going on, because there's a lot of fantastical elements to this game, and there's some things that are just confusing to have described to you. So that really helped. But some of the parts that I really enjoyed, and one of the scenes that I think we really probably did the most work on, Anna, was Adol waking up on the beach and kind of orienting himself, finding the rusty sword, making his way onto the island and meeting. Laxia. Of course, my other, favorite scene in the book is when they find Dana in sleeping in the tree. And so that was one where I think, we actually were on a call going working through this a little bit line by line to make sure that the scene in the game came through in the book.
Yeah, actually, I wanted to comment on that scene because after all that editing, I give it to my copy editor, who was also very involved, and he actually really enjoyed the book, which none of us expected he would. So copy editor's job is just to correct all the technical things, to make sure all the names are consistent, all the grammar is correct, just really go through the text from the technical standpoint. So in that scene, he suddenly says, well, we still have no idea, was she naked or was she wearing something? And it's I look back and there's a young woman sleeping in a cradle. So nobody knows. So yeah. And then I thought, yeah, you could picture the scene different ways. So yeah.
Well, and I guess that's why it's good a guy got to check it out before.
I was going to say, it never occurred to me that she might have been naked.
Would be wondering about whether they were dressed or not before. Well, I mean, straight.
And I mean, people have seen this picture. It's a title image for many game editions, but yeah, I mean, I never thought of that, and then I had to go back.
To be fair, Don is a little sparse on the clothing, a lot.
Yeah. Well, that's why they say you should run everything past a 12-year-old. So can I turn this into a lewd joke?
It's actually funny because my son is exactly 12, and he was my first reader after the book was done. He was the first, so we read the entire book, and he wrote 2 essays in school about this book.
Oh, wow.
So this book is not published, but my mom wrote it. So
your adolescent child liked it enough to write about it?
Yeah, he was my first
fan. Seriously, having raised kids, if you have a tween kid who's my mom, my dad, my parent did a thing that I that's cool, I'm proud of them. It's wow, you are the coolest parent ever.
And I'm willing to talk about it in front of other people.
It made me very proud, because if I could, if a 12-year-old likes this book and then grown-ups like this book too, it's kind of, an ultimate reward for a writer. Yeah.
So I have one other
question.
You should, I agree. I have one other question kind of in this writing section, just that I was really curious about, even just for myself. And I think that others might like to hear it too. Was there anything that came up that you absolutely didn't expect about this, adapting something? Was there something that you were I didn't even think of that, or any sort of weird bump that really was unexpected for you?
For me, yes, but I'll let Anna answer.
Yeah, I was wondering if
you're
asking me or Kaylin, because
both of you, because you were both in the writing.
I'm sure there are many. Yeah. So to me, when I approach characters, so my first step is to really get into their heads. So I can't start writing until the characters feel like real people to me. And then when they're real people, you don't put words into their mouths. You put them into a situation where they get to talk, and then you just write down what they said. And this was kind of interesting because the game does have a dialogue. And I did write all this dialogue down as my first draft. So in some cases, they say the right thing in the game. In some cases, they just don't. And I never paid attention to what they said in the game. So here's the situation, and here's what this character said, the way I understand it. And when you do that, your characters surprise you all the time. So they say unexpected things. So there are all these geographical names. So island landmarks are called a certain way in the game. So in the game, it's never explained where these names come from. So in my case, the 3 main characters arrive on the beach, and they see a landmark, and Laxia suggests a name. And then Sahad says, what kind of a name is that? And they got into an argument. I didn't expect that, but it was so funny, and then Adol tries to reconcile that. And actually, so to me, things like this, the small details, it was really characters acting on their own, and I'm just watching and writing it down. So it's an incredible feeling when it works. And I think one credit to this game, all the characters felt so alive that this was easy. So you just have to stop and think. So one of my favorite characters is Council Darius. I don't know if you guys even remember who he is. Probably, it's a passing character in Eternia. He's just like this, and I didn't add any lines to him, but when he talks, it's kind of, to me, really funny. I don't know, it's just hard to explain. So I had many of those moments in the game, but I'm kind of sure that Kaylin would name different things if she talks about surprises.
Well, I mean,
Actually,
oh, sorry, go ahead, Jeff.
oh no, I was just thinking like there's a bit that kind of like I'm kind of curious about for Anna.
Mhm.
Something that when I was helping to with the retranslation, there are some flashbacks where Donna is talking to her friends, like what are the names? Olga, and what's the other one's name? I can't remember.
Sarai. Sarai.
Um, Sarai, yes. But in the game, in the English, it's not obvious who's speaking.
Mm.
Because it doesn't specifically say their names, and it doesn't specifically say their names in the Japanese either, but it's more obvious because their dialects come out differently.
Mm. I
And
see.
I don't, and I felt like that didn't really come across in the English, and that was something that was one thing where even in the retranslation, I wasn't sure it really was obvious who was saying,
Yes,
like what.
actually, yeah. It's really interesting that you brought it up because yes, there were places like this, and there were places where I had no idea who said what. I wrote down all the lines, and then I had to sit down and get into their heads and assume who
Mm,
said what. And sometimes they
right,
actually also said different things. So very little of the original game dialogue ended up in the book. But there are places here and there which I felt like this is really what they said. So in those dialogues, yeah, I had to make assumptions, and I always
right.
made them based on what the characters feel like to me. And I'm actually wondering if I did it correctly. So the dialogue works, but I don't know if this was if the original lines, like with the Japanese dialect, would be correctly assigned.
Well, yeah, if it makes you feel any better, it wasn't really any more obvious to the people who were actually working on translating the game
Okay.
either.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, but yeah, I do remember those places, and it's really
yeah.
interesting that you mentioned it. Yeah.
Oh, nice. All right, awesome.
Yeah.
Kaylin, did you have any big surprises? Just really unexpected something?
Yeah, but it had more to do with like story mechanics and how to approach something like this. You know, like you get in your head, okay, we're going to do a novelization. We're going to take care of all the things that, you know, I had mentioned before that we were talking about, be aware of those. And then something that I hadn't taken into consideration until I actually kind of dove into the book was the way games like this work, which is they keep finding castaways. And it's been weeks in some cases, and those people would actually probably be dead. And the supplies and the needing to kind of go, listen, this is a video game. We're gonna make this as, realistic, I guess, as we can, but at some point you've got to just kind of suspend the way that this would actually work if there was a bunch of people shipwrecked on an island and go with it. But to Anna's point about, the characters coming alive, something that I really appreciated was, when they find somebody, they have a conversation with them. It's, oh, you're also, a survivor of the shipwreck. Okay, well, we'll take you back to the village. So, something I kind of didn't anticipate and then had to get myself like, okay, how are we going to handle this, is the video game mechanics behind this. This isn't a movie that we're translating. This is a very it's a long story and there's a lot going on here. So that was, in terms of like the writing and how to handle this, that was my surprise. Where it's like, oh right, this is not the same as just writing the novelization for a movie. There's a lot more we got to do here.
Exactly. It really is just, games are just their own art form and everything. Although what's funny is when you were describing that scene with waking up on the beach, I'm thinking Lost. Like that's how the first episode of Lost is too. It's just like it starts off with him waking up and then they keep finding people ages later. So I was like, I'm sure that this game ends better than Lost ended, but that's another panel. So we
that scene was ridiculously hard to write. It's like for how simple the scene is, to make it interesting and kind of flow nicely and have all the right things was just a nightmare.
It makes sense because it's visual. He doesn't have anyone to talk to yet, right? So it makes sense. So it is time for our first audience question session. I know, I couldn't believe it. I'm going to look. Some of them may already have been answered in our conversation. Let's see. In fact, like Phosphasium asked about why E8. I think we covered that. Do you guys all agree?
Yeah.
Why?
Yeah.
Okay.
Why E8 specifically? Yeah, I think.
Yeah. Okay.
Well.
So Scott asks, "What's your favorite piece of East music?"
Oh, Oh, that's a challenge. I mean, I'm probably the odd man out, but my favorite piece of music in East 8 specifically is Night Survivor. It's the one that plays when you're doing like the nighttime raids. And
To sing it for
and
us
like
now.
I yeah, and but like probably the one that the most iconic one, I would say. I mean, like, bear in mind, my first introduction to the series was, it was specifically the PC Engine TurboGrafx version. So, like, for me, those will always be the official versions of the music for East 1, 1 through 4. And East 3, like the PC Engine version specifically, is probably my favorite game soundtrack of all time, period, bar none. But if it's not the strongest foe from East 3, it's probably either termination from East 2 or to make the end of battle from East 2.
Mhm.
Anybody else have any favorite music they would like to mention? I have no idea because, again, non-player. Although I think I'm going to fix it after this. You guys have
should-
really got
we
me
should fix
interested.
that.
So
We
I
should
mean,
fix
I
Yeah,
love
that.
the
definitely.
title song of Lacrimosa of Dana, and I also love the Maya song. That was one I kind of had on repeat at some point, but yeah, there, yeah.
For East 8, I just gotta, shout out Sunshine Coastline. I know a lot of people love that too, but it was one of
It's a
my
classic.
favorites. Yeah.
somebody mentioned that in the chat. So yeah, definitely that's something that's
Yeah.
that
I
is
found a couple
really
of really
lovely.
good covers of it on YouTube as well. Like really, really impressive.
That's very cool. So, all right, let me look at our next question. Oh, this is a really good question. Actually, Harold Hernandez asks, well, first says, thank you for hosting this. So thanks to us. You're very welcome. As a
Thank you
newcomer to
for
the
coming.
series, yeah, really, thank you. As a newcomer to the series, what East game is generally considered a good place to start?
East 8,
Yes.
straight up. It is
Mhm.
incredibly polished. It has a wonderful standalone story, and you can just get into it very quickly.
Mhm.
Overall, every single game is great, but it's a good starting point. Like if you were to start with a different game where it may not uh like how do I put this? Don't start with something that you may not like and then have a bad impression of the series. Where East 8, it's unanimous. Like everyone loves East 8.
Mhm. Yeah.
I would
I think
say if
it's
it's not East 8, then probably Oath-in-Felghana is your other best starting point because it's
no.
the other one that's like extremely standalone.
Like
But a lot of it,
big no, Jeff, big no. So if you play that game, you never. I mean, it's
well,
just
I mean,
very hard
it is
gameplay. So that's like
probably the hardest game in the series.
it's.
But in
If you
terms of
start
just
with
like
that one, you're off is serious. So I gave up after the first episode. Then
It's
my
the
son
jumping.
picked it up for
It's the
me.
jumping. Yeah.
Yeah, it's a
yeah,
jumping. I get like
well, no, it's
vertigo.
E6 was the one where the jumping would really just make you because like the dash jump
Yeah.
in E6 was terrible.
I mean,
Yeah,
yeah, I
it's just
just
an
want
awful
to
idea.
say that, yeah, right. So, so is8 not only has the story, but the gameplay also. So
Yeah.
you can actually play it. People like me who play like everything on super easy and still cannot get through like is1 without the help of a 12-year-old. So, yeah,
Aw.
just,
I would also say I would add that like if you were like an older gamer like me, I mean
mhm,
I'm almost 50, but like if you have a taste for like classic games and you're not like put off by I'll be honest and say slightly archaic game mechanics, then start with the Chronicles games because those are like that's the beginning
again,
of the series, and it's
like
just like if
first
you can get in,
dungeon, like you
but
get
if you
into
can
a
get
dungeon,
into
that's
that.
it, right? That's it, out, like first dungeon.
Yeah, I mean,
So
and
let's
that is
start,
fair. But
yeah,
like, I'm also a much older school gamer, and so
well, you
like I
know.
just kind of I just kind of went into like I kind of fell in love with the bump combat system,
Yes,
especially
Same.
the way it was
I
presented
loved
in the
it.
Chronicles
yeah.
games because
Mhm.
and like the biggest thing, and anyone who's into fighting games will probably appreciate this as well. But like when you do that head-on hit of an enemy in those games, you get that very slight pause, like just a couple of like 2/60ths of a second, where it's just like pauses for a second and just adds a little bit of weight to those hits.
Like
And
hit stun.
this just feels hit stun.
Yeah.
Fighting game fans will know, or hit stop or hit stun, hit pause, whatever term you want to use. but it just feels good to ram into, like, just do that steamroller approach to enemies. And like once you it's not super approachable because it's not a style of gameplay that took off and really became like the the modern dual analog kind of style of gameplay that is so ubiquitous nowadays. But like once you get into it, if it clicks with you, then it's likely to click hard.
No.
It's also
makes
worth
sense.
noting. It's worth noting that East 1 and 2 are very short games. So if you
Yeah.
could, play them, you can finish the first game in like 8 to 10 hours.
Yeah.
Or less. I mean, honestly,
Or
like if you're
less.
playing at 5 to 8 hours is kind of what I would put for East 1.
Yeah.
And your first time through. Granted, like again, like I played East 1 and 2 on PC Engine, and it took me all weekend to get through those games.
Yeah.
But
I mean, I think
I was also like 16.
So I have to say, like, I've started with East 8, and the only thing that kind of irked me, so when Adol appears, everybody's supposed to know who he is, Adol and Doggy, and I had no idea. So then, like, when Doggy appears, he says, of course, Adol, you know me, like in the dialogue, and the choice was like, I have no idea who you are, so I made this choice, and everybody's like, of course you know who I am. It's like, I don't, actually, I really don't, but yeah. Yeah.
That's good to know. So there's clearly some differing opinions, but I think everybody mostly started with 8. So I guess if we're gonna just pick one.
Yeah,
All right, so we're gonna do one more question right now, and then
sorry, can I say something? I'm sorry.
Of course, absolutely.
So there are people in the audience who joined a little bit later, and I wanted to acknowledge them because I'm not sure whether we'll be able to get them on the panel. So these are the people who are my early readers, and they made really critical contributions to this. So before Kayla never even really like kind of dug into it, they gave me this advice which really kind of shaped how I approached this novel. So, and without their help, I think it wouldn't have worked, basically. So before I felt like I had a novel which I could give somebody to edit, I showed it to my fellow writers, so both of them are very good writers. So one of them is Bernie Moyes, he's an audience, and the other one is Leo Karagotsky. And Bernie in particular just worked through the first maybe 100 pages with me, and his suggestions made all the difference. And sometimes he'll just say like one sentence, and I will go back and write a whole scene, like several pages, and it would just work amazingly well. So, and then
a shout out to Bernie then, big time. Who's here? The other person's not here, right? So
one of these people, he's here, and I just kind of without him, this book also wouldn't have happened. Bernie! So yeah, I just wanted to So Bernie also belongs. So he introduced me to a local sword fighting group. It's called Modern Gladiatorial Arts. It's a group of people who get together and work out how to fight with historical weapons. So like real fights, not choreographed, not for show. Just they take a sword and they like figure out the mechanics of fighting with a sword. So I went to their practice sessions and worked through a lot of things because Adol, of course, is a renowned swordsman, and they can't write it believably unless you know what you're talking about. So these sessions really helped me to do that. But also, Bernie was one of those people. I'll text to him like at 11 p.m. and say, how do you call this sword? And Bernie will give me like a very detailed answer right away. So, So I just
subject matter experts are very useful.
So these are like people who really made this book much better.
So I think we've already answered the next question, which was, what is the most challenging part of adopting E-Sate from a video game to a book? Do you feel we've answered that as well?
Well, we could talk about this forever, probably.
I mean, we could, yeah.
But I think a lot of people are saying that this is about giving characters voices, especially giving Adol a voice. But I felt like this wasn't challenging, actually, because Adol does have a very strong personality. Even if he doesn't talk, we know what he's like. So to me, it was, again, getting into his head and then like watching him act and just writing down what he said. So I think, so to me, like every challenge was actually fun. So like,
that's good. Hey, you know what? If you're going to have a challenge and it's a good time, then it's the good kind of challenge. So
I have a quick question for Anna. Like, was there any particular character that you especially enjoyed writing for?
Oh, yeah, there was. And I think if we mention this character by name, it would be a spoiler. But yeah, so he appears like later in the game, and he was one of the characters who really surprised me. I knew what story arc I wanted for him, but when he showed up, these scenes just like worked out beautifully. And there were one of my favorite scenes to write. I think I heard some readers say that they're also their favorite scenes to read. I also, however, heard people say that, yeah, why did you put that in even like with my, so it was, yeah, one of those kind of surprise characters later in the book. And yeah, I don't.
So
That's
did you
cool.
did you do anything special for kind of that dynamic of the bromance between Adol and Dogi? Like, how did
Huh.
you feel about that relationship?
Well, so I mean, they're good friends. I think they just kind of joke around with each other. So to me, there wasn't anything unusual about their relationship. It's like two friends who traveled together. So it was very organic. I don't know.
Okay.
So I kind of, yeah. So they joke around a lot. Yeah. Dougie always gets into adventures because he's with Adol and they both joke about
Yeah.
it. Dougie always has
Aw.
Adol's back. So yeah, it was, I think, a good, just good friendship. So I think, yeah, actually, one thing that I really loved about Is 8, it doesn't have any bad people in it. So none of the characters are bad. So some of them maybe do bad things because they're convinced that this is the right thing to do. But there's really like all of these people are incredibly real because, yeah, they have flaws. They make mistakes, but none of them is a bad person. So to me, kind of it was really pleasant because so writing a book where like nobody is a bad person, even though people are complicated, is much nicer than writing a book when there's like this bad evil guy or like an evil sect like trying to destroy the
Yeah.
world. Yeah.
So is
Right.
it kind of, for those of us who haven't played, then would you say it's sort of man versus environment, like the island and getting off the island is sort of the main thing as opposed to a bad guy, a big bad?
Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
cool.
Yeah.
All right, so we have something exciting before our brief intermission. We're going to have a little 5-minute break for, whatever you need a 5-minute break for. But before we do that, we have maps to give away. So the names have been selected. What I think we're going to have to do to get your information, since you're obviously going to assume you don't want to type it in the chat, if I call your name, email us. It's Anna, it's Lacrimosa the novel at Gmail, right?
Yes. Yeah.
So yeah, email us at lacrimosathenovel@gmail.com if you are one of the 3 people whose name I'm about to call, and let us know. And we can then make those arrangements. So first, Harold Hernandez, you are one of the winners of the maps. So go ahead and send that email out. Number 2, Scott Bloom, who is on my screen right now saying congrats. You get one too, buddy.
Nice.
And then
Congrats, me.
finally, finally, Fophazium, you are the 3rd winner. So everybody, you guys email us again at lacrimosathenovel@gmail.com and we'll get that out to you. All right, so we're going to take a 5-minute break. It's 9:30 my time zone right now. So we'll come back at 9:35 my time zone. So back in 5 minutes, let's stretch our legs and we're going to tackle some more talk about this game that we all, or you all love, and hopefully I will love someday soon.
Yeah.
All right, back in 5.
Okay.
I'm just going to stop my video and everything, but I'll be back.
Person. And so, and when you would do that, it would be just be like the red-haired swordsman would be how most people translated, or Adol with the red hair. And so, and when when Tom saw that, and he saw like, we'll do Adol the Red, just kind of like they would name someone after that, like a pirate or something named after the color of their hair, like that, because Adol is apparently the only redhead in the entire world.
That's true. Yeah. I noticed that.
So I was like, Adol the Red. I was like, that's brilliant. And like, and as a note, just as an aside, he also did the Corpse Party. Like, he worked on all those games, and I honestly think that's the best work that Tom ever did in localization. I love his work on those games. but yeah, just like I was just a big fan of that. I love good choices that kind of convey the original intent and but also mesh very well with the target language. So yeah, like I was very impressed with Tom for that work, and I really appreciate that. Just like add all the red, that sounds great. So like when I got to work on East 5, the fan translation, so like yes, I'm definitely incorporating this because I wanted to make sure that that fan translation did not conflict with anything that was officially being released.
We're going to talk more about translation and localization in a bit, but
Okay.
break time over.
All right.
Sounds like you guys had a productive break, so that's awesome. But what we actually have one more question we're going to do now because it actually leads into something we wanted to share. And so Michael Mertes asks, what has Falcom's reaction been to the book now that it's finished?
Mm-hmm.
So, who would like to? Are you going to read some of this, Anna, or is Jeff, or who's going to read some of this?
Gosh, we didn't prepare. So we right. So
I guess it's going
there's
to
an
be you then.
interview. Yeah, there's an interview with the president of Nikon Falcom, which was posted today on the novel's website, and it was really amazing. I can tell you, it made me all my work on this novel worth it just to hear what he had to say about the book. It's available on the same website where the link to this webinar was, and we could read like an answer to maybe the first question. I'm not sure. And
yeah, why don't we just read a tiny little
I don't
chunk
know, so
just
that's
to
the
give
thing.
you an
So
idea?
Jeff was going to read it, but we can
Oh, okay.
put
All right.
We sort of joked about it. I guess we never
but
really
the
decided.
translation is different from what we had yesterday. So
Yeah. All right. Well, okay.
I don't know if you.
All right. Well, do you want me to just go ahead and start it at the beginning?
So I thought just read the answer to the very first question and nothing else, because I think we don't have time for the whole thing, but yeah.
Yeah, of course. The initial question was to Toshihiro Kondo. Can you please tell us your thoughts on this novelization? How do you feel about an Ys game being novelized, and specifically about the novelization of Ys 8 Lacrimosa of Dana? And his answer was, first of all, I would like to thank the author, Anna Kashina, and everyone else involved in the novelization of Ys 8. I personally consider it a great honor to be involved in the novelization of Ys 8. Game development isn't just about storytelling, as we also have to consider the player's experience with the action, exploration of the game world, etc. But speaking as a scenario writer, it's gratifying to know that people paid attention to the story, and I'm pleased to see it turned into such a fine book.
Yeah,
there you go. So that's part of the reaction. They seem to like it, and so that's very exciting.
So I keep a copy of this interview under my pillow when I sleep. So.
Oh, I love
Very
that.
sweet.
So you should. That's quite a compliment, honestly. So we also have one other thing. Anna, do you want to introduce what this reading is and who has done the reading? We have a little bit of a surprise.
Yeah, so that was a huge surprise to me, and that's like one of the best release day presents I could have ever imagined. So Kira Buckland, who is a voice actress who did Laxia in the game. And Laxia in my book is one of the 3 point of view characters and a really major character. So Kira did the reading for us. And so we sent her the book and she loved the book and she just wanted to support this release. She was very excited. So she sent us a short reading from chapter 2 where Laxia first appears. So I wanted to play it live and I worked this out technically. So I'm going to try to do this.
Here we go.
Laxia von Roswell was a proper lady, thank you very much. And a proper lady had to maintain her bearings in every situation, even when shipwrecked on a deserted island. After washing up on the beach, she'd spent what felt like hours rushing around in a vain search for other survivors. Now, she felt absolutely exhausted. Her salt-encrusted clothes creaked with sand, chafing in the most uncomfortable places. She needed to wash it all off if she wanted to restore her ability to think straight. Last night on the Lombardia, Franz had infuriated her so much by showing up out of the blue. Being her butler didn't give him any right to follow her everywhere. She probably shouldn't have said all these things to him before storming out of the saloon, but she fully expected to straighten them out in the morning, as well as to give him a proper scolding for disobedience. and now she didn't even know what had happened to him. She refused to entertain the idea that he hadn't made it ashore, but given that, so far, she hadn't found any trace of survivors, she had to at least acknowledge the possibility. The thought brought tears to her eyes, even though crying was absolutely unseemly for a proper lady. She supposed she should feel grateful that leaving the party early and being in her stateroom when the disaster struck had allowed her to change out of that ridiculous dress into a comfortable pair of breeches and shirt, strap on her rapier and belt pouch, and grab a few necessities, such as a scarf and a life vest. This had made her as prepared as possible when she rushed on deck and into all the chaos. She would never forget the screams, the breaking masts, people falling overboard. What a horror. And now she was alone, possibly the only survivor, with no idea what to do. Tears welled in her eyes again, and she vigorously wiped them away. First things first, a bath. She found a clean stream and followed it to a secluded glade where a big boulder at its bend marked a wider pond she could use to wash properly. Glancing around to ensure that no predators would disturb her at a vulnerable moment, she unsheathed her rapier and set it within easy reach, then quickly took off her clothes, rinsed them, and spread them over the boulder to dry before stepping into the water. It felt so good to wash off the crust of sand and sea salt, the cool water soothing her parched skin. She always got sunburned easily, and of course she'd left her creams and ointments on the Lombardia, but that was something to worry about later. She knelt, plunging her whole head beneath the water. Then, standing knee-deep in the pool and lifting her face to the sun, she wrapped into her scarf to dry off. Rocks clattered behind her. A predator? A wild beast? She grabbed her rapier and spun around. A man emerged from behind the boulder. His eyes widened when he saw the rapier pointed at him. His arm blurred as he drew his sword and knocked it out of her hand in a fluid move too fast for her to follow. Shocked, she stumbled backwards, releasing the scarf she was using for cover. It slid down into the water, leaving her stark naked. The stranger's eyes grew wider still. His cheeks flared scarlet, and the jagged tip of the rusty sword in his hand, how had he managed to draw it so quickly, dipped to the ground? She screamed, then grabbed her clothes and sprinted for the nearby bushes. She recognized the man, that insolent crewman from last night, who had interrupted her so rudely on the way to her cabin. A swirl of emotion swept through her head. Relief at seeing another survivor of the shipwreck. Annoyance about their previous meeting, when he'd talked to her like an equal and showed much more perception and insight than a simple crewman like him had any right to do. Disappointment that this wasn't Franz. Deep in the leafy thicket, she hastily pulled on her damp clothing, unsure what to do. Should she keep running? Probably a sensible course of action, considering she didn't know this man at all. But then again, a villain trying to take advantage of her probably wouldn't look so terrified or blush so deeply after catching her at an inappropriate moment. At present, the two of them seemed to be the only survivors from the Lombardia. It seemed like a better idea to stay together. She supposed, worries aside, she should be thankful that it wasn't Franz who discovered her. She would never live down the shame of being seen naked by her own butler. Still, facing that arrogant man was hardly any better. Last night he had acted so boldly around her, as if he considered himself to be superior. And now, why did men have to be so disgusting, tactless, domineering, ogling every woman they came across? A lady was entitled to privacy when taking a bath. She clung to her anger as she finished dressing. Without the anger, she'd probably burst into tears. With a witness this time, which would be completely unforgivable. Anger helped her to hold it together as she finally allowed herself to face the full extent of her predicament. Shipwrecked and stuck alone with an arrogant stranger on a deserted island notorious for being cursed. When she finally emerged from the bushes, The man was standing a few feet away, his back decisively turned. She carefully checked her clothes and hair before approaching him. "I suppose I have kept you waiting long enough," she said. "You may turn around now." He kept his eyes down as he obeyed. His cheeks were still red. Good. At least he'd learned a lesson. In fact, he looked so embarrassed she almost felt sorry for him, even though she was still reeling from the memory of the incident. Last night in the dark hallway, she hadn't had a chance to see him clearly. Now that she did, the first detail that caught her eye was his distinct hair color. Flaming red, gleaming in the sun like fire. She'd never seen anyone with hair this red before. He looked younger than she'd originally thought. 3 or 4 years older than herself at most. She was good at telling people's age by small signs, like their skin, which always accumulated wrinkles and blemishes over time. This stranger's skin was surprisingly smooth, but his hands, calloused from manual work, betrayed experience. Tall and well-muscled, but not overly so, he held himself with a grace that brought to mind the renowned fencing teacher her father had once invited to Roswell Manor all the way from Rom. She'd already witnessed the ease with which this stranger had disarmed her, a nearly impossible move when wielding a heavy broadsword one-handed against a rapier. How had a swordsman of his skill ended up as a simple crewman on the Lombardia? "We should introduce ourselves," she said. "I am Laxia von Roswell, a noble lady from Garmin. And you are a sailor, I presume?" She drew herself up, looking at him down her nose. Not an easy feat, considering their height difference. He finally raised his eyes, their clear blue a vibrant contrast with the red of his hair. "I'm Adel Kristen, an adventurer, actually."
Can I just say that that scene specifically was one of the bits that kind of made me go, because like it's an anime trope, the guy walking in on the girl bathing and he gets, like if I remember right, she slapped him and everything. It's just like, okay, yeah, this is a very boilerplate standard, but I really, really, really enjoy how you like adapted that scene.
Yeah,
It
you see, like
made
it helped
made it
that I
feel
didn't.
like more natural and not so forced.
Yeah,
Yeah.
so I'm
I'll
glad.
to add to that, this is one of those things that's great about a novelization is you get to go beyond the, the anime trope of like guy finds a girl bathing and in a stream, and instead you get to see, why Laxia is like she is, and really establish the character very early on in the story. She was my favorite in this story.
Yeah. Oh yeah. I love Laxia because like of all, like, I've played these games for decades at this point, but of all like the women companion characters or kind of counterparts that adults had over the years like I got that there was like this vague romantic tension between them that never really got addressed or fulfilled. But like I really, really liked her. She's honestly my favorite. I like her better than Lilia. I like her better than Elena. I'm just like, I really, really hope she comes back at some point. I really enjoyed her character. So what's funny is like I've had an extremely busy past couple weeks. I just moved, and so I haven't had a chance to read the copy of the book that Lim sent to me. And yes, better than Karna. Someone just mentioned that in the chat.
Yeah.
But just hearing that, I was like, okay, dang it. Okay, now I need to sit down and really and make the time to sit down with this book, because like I'm shocked at how much I really enjoyed that. So like hearing her English voice
that was great.
say that. So yeah, like that was fantastic. It's like I'm kind of geeking out like the fans in the chat are. So yeah,
Well, I'm really
great.
glad. Yeah, I'm really grateful to Kira Buckland, because hearing your character's voice live is just an incredibly special feeling.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and I just wanted to say that I'm glad I wasn't familiar with these anime tropes when I chose the scene, but to me the scene was kind of like funny. I don't know. So And I guess because I was seeing it, so I chose Laxia as a point of view character because I think she grows the most throughout the book. She changes
Definitely,
a lot.
definitely.
And that was fascinating just to watch her grow. I don't think she ever had any romantic tension with Adol, so I might express an unpopular view, but I think it was like a brother-sister relationship.
I will say, when I was reading this, and you and I had talked before and talked about like the romance components of it, I thought it was my first read through. I thought it was going to be Laxia that was the romantic entanglement there.
And I
It
was
actually, from
looking
just
forward to
hearing
like,
that, I
yeah.
would say just from hearing that scene, that is what I would think too.
Yeah. Well, there's also just the interaction of they're completely opposite personalities too, and I was like, oh, is this going to go from an enemies to lovers kind of
Enemies to
thing?
enemies lovers. Yeah.
And
I mean,
Lim wanted
if
to
Anna
say
had chosen,
something. Oh, you'll have to just push in, Lim. Sorry, go
I
ahead.
think Lim
Yeah, go ahead.
had the comment actually, and he was like,
just wanted to say, coming in from someone who has played the game, like many of the characters in the game were voiced, and while reading the book, I couldn't help but hear their voices while I was reading it, and it was awesome. You have certain characters like Dogi, Sir Carlin, the main cast, like they were all speaking in my mind, and it was fantastic.
Oh, just a quick aside for Anna. I haven't had, like I said, I haven't had a chance to read the book yet. But did you address the Meunier question
the what?
for Sir Carlin? Like his whole thing was like he was demanding. There's a little side quest or like a little for him, the arrogant noble that he was like, I want to be served Meunier. Like salmon
No, I
Meunier, like
didn't.
the dish.
I'm sorry,
Okay.
I didn't.
Okay,
I didn't
no
have
worries.
a
I
lot.
was just curious.
Yeah, but Sir Carlin is kind of. I loved writing his scenes. I just like there was only so much I could fit in the book. But yeah,
I mean, jerks are always fun to write.
Yeah,
always.
Yeah, like annoying people. Yeah, just cool. Yeah.
So I want to dive back into the translation talk because I think that's something a lot of people are very interested in, is from what I could see in the chat. And it was something, I think we were going to talk about anyway. So I would kind of like you guys to speak to some of the challenges of the translation and localization, and maybe a very quick definition of how those things are different for people who don't know might be helpful as well. And I guess if you know, and you may not know, like, is it the same working on a book versus a game? Anyway, Jeff, why don't we start with you?
Okay. Or do you have a specific question or just want me to kind of riff?
Well, yeah, no, just kind of riff, well, I guess, sorry, I'm kind of almost asking like two questions at once. So, first of all, I think just what are some general challenges of translation, localization, that kind of thing? Because obviously Anna played the English translation, so she wasn't really part of translating this. So that's kind of why I wanted to get your thoughts on that.
Well, I would say that the difference between, like, a lot of people have, I mean, localization has kind of become a kind of a dirty word in a lot of fan communities, because when people see the word localization, they tend to think, drastically changing things to fit into whatever the target demographic is. Say, like with, when they brought Pokemon to the West, there are certain episodes that would get censored or changed. It would change names and everything. Or like there's a certain Pokemon who looks kind of unfortunately similar to a racist caricature. I can't remember the character's name. I've never played Pokemon. But like, and that's something where they had Jinx, was that it?
Pokemon Jinx, yeah.
Yeah. But yeah, they had to change that. Like that's an aspect of localization where it's like sometimes you have to make those changes. And for me, well, I mean, that's a translation is just is to me is a much more direct interpretation of, kind of on the more literal side, the sort of things that you would see in, like, to be honest, like your average like fan subtitle of an anime or something like that. And localization is, to me, in my mind, is more about trying to, instead of looking at the specific way that the original was written, trying to glean the original intent. There's a very, very common phrase in Japanese, if you've ever watched anything like Dragon Ball or your Yu Yu Hakusho, Naruto, the line that's like any anime fan will know this is omae dake wa yurusanai, which literally translates to "you are the only one I can never forgive." Like that's really awkward. English speakers don't say things like that. But what it means, like it refers to, like there's a thing in Japan where like if someone gives you an earnest apology, then it is considered extremely rude not to accept it. And so by saying like, I will never forgive you, it's basically saying that no matter what you do, no matter what kind of recompense you make, I will never let this go. So like to me, like a good way to localize that with adjustments for context and everything was like, I will never you will never get away with this. I'm never going to let this go. Like this is something that's going to stay with me forever. I will carry this to my grave. That's kind of the tone. So that would be more the localized version of that line that I think would carry across the same general intent to a native English speaker that the original Japanese line would to a native Japanese speaker. And that, to me, that's the biggest difference between translation versus localization.
That makes a lot of sense.
I'm actually curious because East games are kind of written intentionally in the Western setting and targeted, I assume, to the Western audience. Is there a difference, I wonder, in how they approach the language when they write East games versus like Japanese games?
Not especially, because you'll see different different dialects. Like I've seen certain characters speak in what's called Kansai Ben, which is like the Kansai region of Japan. And it usually when it gets translated, most of the time people will give it kind of a whatever the local equivalent of a country bumpkin sort of sound. In America, they would give it it often gets translated to a southern accent. Like if you ever watch the Ranma 1/2, Ranma 2分の1, there's a character Ukyo, and she speaks with with Kansai Ben, like that Kansai dialect. And as I recall, like when they dubbed that, they gave her a little bit of a drawl to kind of make her sound a little less cultured. And but that sort of thing, I mean, honestly, I expect it's kind of the same whenever anyone is writing in in an environment that's not their native, like not their native language. They interpret it in the way that makes sense to their linguistic idioms and everything. They'll use turns of phrase that make sense to the target audience. And that one of the problems that I always kind of had with that obsessively literal approach to translation, especially Japanese, since it's not a romantic language and it doesn't have that common base, things don't convert cleanly. But I always kind of got the impression when people were like, if it's not extremely close to the original Japanese, including Japanese sentence structure and everything, then it's not accurate. I'm like, I don't agree with that at all. And honestly, I think that attitude, if it's not racist, it's at least a little ethnocentric, because it presumes that the original language doesn't have any context or any kind of nuance to it that a first year language student couldn't understand and interpret. I'm like, then I don't agree with that at all.
Yeah, absolutely. Anna, how do you think using the fact that you used an English game translation to create your book may have affected the process? If you can even answer that as somebody who I believe doesn't speak Japanese anyway. I know you speak more than one language, but
So yeah, I don't speak Japanese. I have some understanding about translation because my first language is Russian, and I switched languages sometime, like in my adult life. I switched by translating my first novel from Russian into English using like a big dictionary. And in the process, I learned everything about how languages translate into each other. So these two languages, you can't just translate word to word. I'm sure Jeff knows that. You have to say the same thing in the right language. So there were questions sometimes. So there were situations where I looked up Japanese and did kind of like a Google Translate just to see like what are other possible interpretations of that. Very rarely it would be like one word. And I think that's so for the most part, though, yeah, I just kind of trusted the English translators, and I felt like, yeah, so I think I had a bit of an issue with some of the names, because to me they would have sounded better if they were like transliterated differently. But overall, yeah, I think yeah, I tried to be mindful of that, but I had to go with the English language text. So.
And a lot of those names were the official English names were taken from Falcom, like Laxia. Like we talked about this the other night. The way that her name is written in Japanese is Dakusha, Daksha. Like, and so like I like how that sounds, but I mean it makes perfect sense that people will say Laxia, like but like looking at some of the older names that they did, like for East 5, or East 4, the name Eldil, like the last surviving winged one. The way that Falcom originally wrote out his name in English was Eldirl, which does not roll off the tongue in any language. Eldirl.
But I think so what I felt was, in some cases there was seemingly an intention to find an English language equivalent of this name instead of making it sound slightly foreign. And I think in some cases it works, in some cases it doesn't. So it's like a tough choice. It's personal for every person. So yeah, I might not like the names that like you like, for example. So there's no right or wrong there. But I think in some cases in the game, I felt like a different choice of like how to transliterate the name would have worked better. But yeah.
Right. A lot of it really doesn't click unless you look at a map and it's like, well, that's clearly Europe. And then you look at that, it's like,
I mean,
okay,
first I looked at the
like,
maps. I mean, the first thing I did was print a stack of maps and measure all the distances with a tape measure.
Wow. Like, you get way more serious than even I
approach my world building seriously.
That is a commitment right there.
I mean, it's like I do it for my own novels too, by the way. Before I start writing, I draw a map. And for a very simple reason, because when we say like back east, like or like in Maine, we have these references in our speech all the time. We don't notice them. Characters in the game have these references too, and in the book especially. So unless I know where is Garmin exactly, I can't write Laxia's character, right? So it's like
okay. I have a question for you, and this might blow up some people's minds because I'm going to say a word that never gets pronounced aloud in any of the games.
Oh boy.
But like the unit of the common unit of measurement in the East world is melai, which is merai or kurimerai. It's which equates to meter and kilometer.
Yeah.
But like people like I was like, okay, how when I first saw that when I was translating East 1 and 2, there are signs that say like, this town is like so many melai away. And I know that when I did that is absolutely, I promise, Homeo, that is absolutely how you pronounce melai. It's not melye, it's not anything. The original Japanese was medai. And
why didn't you just say medai? Why do you have to say melye?
Because I was trying to come up with a way to write it that I thought would convey that pronunciation, because like the word lie, like soap, lie, Lye in English. That's why it's spelled that way. It's melai.
Okay.
And krimelai was like it's kuri kr can be transliterated to kri or kli or kuli or whatever. And so that was kind of the close, and I'll be honest, I'm not 100% happy with it, but it's canon now, so it's not going away.
Yeah, that's true. So what, you had a question? Sorry.
No, I just well, I guess the question was more like, did you encounter, I don't remember, like, did you encounter that term in your novelization? How did you feel about it? Or did you get that it was meant to be kind of an equivalent to meter and kilometer?
Well, since I measured everything with a tape measure, I knew it was meters and kilometers. And I put it into my introduction because I didn't want people to go through the same measurements again. So I have a one-page introduction at the beginning of the book where I put down all the essential world-building elements, and this was one of them. I wanted to establish this up front. And this it was hard because it actually took me several reads to understand the distances. I should have asked you right away.
I wish I'd gotten involved sooner. I would have been happy to give you, as much, information as I could.
Yeah, I didn't know you guys at the time, so yeah.
I know.
Yeah.
Next time. Now,
when you
Lim.
novelize East 9, then you bring me on board. I'll be happy to help.
Yeah, there you go.
So are there terms I should be aware of?
Yeah.
Like,
Always.
I mean,
always.
I played this 9, but I don't remember like what am I in for. Yeah.
Sorry, I was just gonna say we have not gotten to hear from Lim or Limfinite in quite a while.
That's
And actually, I wanted to specifically ask you, because you're kind of here as this fan, not representation, but as a fan. Sorry,
Yes,
I just realized I was about to say that, but
I am a fan.
You're a huge fan, so and you have read the book, so kind of without too many spoilers, like, what do you want to share about your experience reading it as a big fan? Like, that's something I would really be like to hear about.
So, I am a big reader, right? I read a lot of video game novelizations as well, and like books set within video game worlds. And when reading this, I tried coming from both perspectives as just like a reader and also a Ys fan. And it was, I think I mentioned before that all the character voices would just ring in my mind as I was reading, and it was great. Anna writes very cinematic, and it just, the characters would come to life. But also from a fan perspective, I wanted to see if any of the story elements are going to call back to other Ys games. And like, I don't want to spoil anything, but yes, there are. As some fellow gamers will know, there's a particular sword that was carried over from a previous game. It is mentioned. There is also one of the castaways that was a part of the previous game. I would say, Salsetta. I'm sure they know who I'm talking about. And it absolutely made sense when this character shows up, where this person knows that Adol has been on many other adventures. So it's little things like that where I was smiling, I was grinning the entire time reading the book. And I think it's going to make fans very, very happy. I smiled a lot while reading this book. So
well, I'm really glad that's kind of the highest praise for the author to hear that.
It is. Like, that's actually it's funny. I didn't write this. I have done 0% of anything to produce this book, and I still feel proud to hear that on your behalf, Anna. Like, it makes me so happy.
I mean, you guys should feel proud because you're all part of it. So yeah.
Well, I would just like to say that before I met Lim, I thought that I was probably the biggest Ys fan on this in the Western Hemisphere, but he has easily surpassed me.
All right.
So I also wanted to call out that there are certain parts of the book where Anna even expanded on the story, and we get into the minds of the characters. And again, not going to spoil a lot. But for those who play the game, will remember that there was an underwater scene. There was a boss fight, and during that scene, Laxia has a tear in her eye, like streaming down her cheek. And I remember, and I know some other people had noticed too, but how is that possible? How is she crying when she's underwater? It was never explained in the game, but it happened, right?
Artistic license.
Yeah, but in the book, Anna explained it. Like, it was actually in there, and it wasn't forced or anything. It just made sense, and I was so happy that there was added story, So thank you for that. That, and amongst many other things that you have expanded on in Eternia and everything. It was a wonderful experience.
Oh, thank you.
Oh, that's so cool.
So yeah, I kind of wanted to mention because there I tried to make everything believable. So if I didn't understand how it worked, I had to understand it before I wrote. So yeah, I didn't understand how you can put on a necklace and breathe underwater. So I had to like come up with a way how is this possible? And then yeah, Jeff might remember this as well as Lymphinid. Once I think like usually it happened late at night, I started texting. So how did this Archaeozoic chasm formed? So there's a big kind of hole in the middle of the ocean in the bay. So what do you know about it? And I just had to like find out, and nobody actually could explain much. So I'm suspecting that the developers of the game put it in because it visually looks really amazing. So it's a visual experience. But then in the book, you have to explain what is it, like where did it come from? And it just kind of, I had to come up with, it's not like I wrote a whole new story about this, but I had to understand it completely before I wrote. And things like this are kind of scattered throughout the book. Like small things are like, how do you start a fire when you're on the beach and you're shipwrecked? And it's not as easy as you think, actually, but yeah. And these things are not really described in a lot of words, but they're kind of there. And I think, yeah, breathing underwater.
Well, based on the reading that we got, I'm very excited to crack it open. It's sitting in my bedroom over there. So yeah, I'll have to get into that soon.
I also wanted to mention that while I was reading, I had my headphones on and I listened to the official soundtrack while reading. So, I mean, anyone who's listening to this right now or watching, highly recommended. It was a great experience.
That's fun. See, there's a little Easter egg for you. So there's a few more.
Egg.
Oh. So there's a few. I know there's a few more audience questions. Boy, sorry, it kind of like got me off my track, which is okay. All right. So if you have any more questions, get them in now because well, like literally this is the time. So I'm not sure how to say this. Switch. Asks, do you have a favorite character in the series? And that says, of course, the series and not only East 8. So feel free to jump in. Like this is sort of just like a fun question for the panel.
That limits it to 2 characters, I think, saying the series. But yeah.
Well, maybe of all the characters in the entire series.
Yeah, they don't have to be in the whole series, but for you, like of any character in the series, who's your favorite?
Yeah, I think in the way it was done, I think Dana is the most amazing character I've seen. Yeah, even though there are several kind of close seconds. I could talk the rest of the evening about it. So.
Yeah. No, Dana is a great character. Genuinely great. She was like easily one of the highlights of E8 to me.
Yeah, right.
But for me, honestly, one of my, I would say, you know, if we're not including Adel as the obvious character, just because he's sort of this, perennially, just there. But yeah, Dogi would easily be my favorite, by and large. But
I'm actually curious why, because there's not a lot of Dogi shown in this series.
Dogi doesn't really get a chance to shine, but I kind of feel like he is sort of the guide rails for Adel. He is, he's the one who keeps Adel a little bit centered. He's sort of goofy, likable, charming, but he also has kind of a practical side. In the whole thing with the castaways, he was the one who, was really like he was kind of the driving force behind making Castaway Village. He's like, all right, if we don't get together and make something happen here, then we're all just kind of, we're not going to succeed here. We're never going to get off this island. So that's kind of where you got to see the best of him. But I think that when he got the chance to shine in the Othenfell Ghana, that was where I was just like, you know what, I really, really like this guy. He's a good friend, and just he's always there, just kind of this unwavering force of positivity in Adel's life, saying no matter what happens. And yes, as Scott Bloom just said, Patrick Seitz did a fantastic job voicing him. Like, one of the best possible choices they could have chosen in casting. And yeah, but yeah, Dogi is like, or I should say there was, back before smartphones, there was a Java East game that starred Dogi as the only playable character. And it's never been ported to anything. I don't even think it's been like that platform's been is emulated or anything like that. And I was like, I want an East spin-off game that stars Dogi. Like it's one of the reasons why I love East 7 so much is because you actually get to play as Dogi.
Okay.
Yeah.
It's,
Yeah, Lim,
it's
Lim,
interesting.
Lim, what about yours? Your favorite character?
Well, if we're talking Ys 8 in particular, I really, really liked Sylvia. Just like as a strong
she was
female
great.
character, and to the point where I really wish that she was playable.
Yes,
but she wasn't, right?
I was so
But,
disappointed. I was like, oh, she's gonna be
Interesting.
my sixth
Yeah.
character. Yeah.
Yeah.
But
How
no,
about in the entire series?
And in the entire series, there was a character. Okay, so I mean, there's so
Sure.
many amazing characters. I wouldn't say this is my number one favorite, but a standout that I really do like is Adol's rival in East 6, the Arc of the Pishtim. And I just want to say,
Yeah.
everyone pronounces his name incorrectly in the West. So, Jeff, how do you say his actual name?
Gash. 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 Gash.
Okay.
There you go, Gash. That
Yep.
so he is
Right.
one of my.
It's not Gaisu. It's like as it is written out in Japanese. It's not Gaisu or Geisu. It's Gashu. Like yes, like back. Yes, like bash the stampede.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know
Bash
once the East like community hears this, you're gonna like break the community there. Like it just.
I think I already broke Homeo in the chat there.
Yes,
He's
you did.
very upset.
So Jeff told me this. Jeff told me this trivia years ago, and when he first told me that, I was even like, no, what?
Yeah, no,
really?
You were no different from me. I was like, serious, like, yeah. When I first saw that, I was like, Gash, really? Because like that has a slang term that is not appropriate for all ages. So I was like, we're going with it. That's one of those rare cases where Falcom's official English, writing of it, which was Geis. I was just like, yes, that is way better than the original, like phonetic Japanese. Oh,
Yeah.
No, because we can't go with Gash.
Kaylin, what about Kaylin?
Yeah, okay. Well, Kaylin, you mentioned Laxia, but do you want to wax on that a little?
I really enjoyed Laxia as a character, especially the way Anna wrote her. I was going to say, what's funny is I kind of was the same where I was like, Doji's like fine, and then when I was doing some research, he is like a fan favorite across all of these, everything I was reading, and I'm like, I think I've got to like play these games or something to understand this. I mean, like there's nothing wrong with him. I don't understand why everyone's like, oh yeah, Doji, he's the best. But I guess he's the stalwart
From
friend
now onwards,
that-
we're calling him Doji. Everyone, it's Doji.
No, we are not.
No.
Like
But a bunch of people in the chat actually agreed with Jeff when Jeff brought up Dogi like that. So yeah, that's I think you're right. Seems to be it's sort of like Adolf's BFF or something, huh?
Yeah.
Dogi is he's kind of the heart of the series in some ways. Like if you think about it this way, if not given a little bit of restraint by Dogi, Adol would probably be dead several times over. He would have gotten himself into situations where it's like, yeah, this probably wouldn't work. Well, I mean, there was a couple instances in East 8 specifically, and East 1, where like, well, if not for Dogi, Adol's adventures would have ended right there. He would have never gotten past age 16 or age 19 or whatever.
We all need that friend, or we are that friend, one or the other.
I mean,
Dogi
we met him.
Oh, sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, we literally met him in East 1, where he breaks the fourth wall. Fans would understand.
Yep.
I mean,
so that's one situation right there when I died.
Okay, I need if we ever meet in person, then remind me to slap you.
Okay, so on that note, there are just a couple more questions, and what it was about music. Hold on, I forgot it. Okay, so Foscassium asks, East has a really good soundtrack. Did you also take this into account when writing the novel? Presumably that's for Anna.
Yeah, right.
When
So
I wrote the novel, I really don't.
yeah. So I'm actually this weird person when it comes to music. I can't focus on anything else when I listen to music. So I can't listen and write, and I can't even listen and read. So if I listen to music, it's 100% occupation. So I
All
did
or
listen
nothing.
to this music a lot, and yeah, this music was beautiful. I really love it. But yeah, it was separate from my writing. Yeah.
That's totally fair. So,
Did any of it
surprisingly,
influence you?
The music? Yeah, so
Yeah,
I kind of, especially I associate Dana with a lot of the songs, and it's kind of, yeah, so it appeals to kind of to this very deep emotion, which is also kind of what resonated with me with these characters. So it did, yeah, it was part of the experience, definitely.
that's really cool. It's a good question. Okay, so weirdly, somebody has asked what my cat's name is.
Okay.
Weird.
Yeah.
What was the first thing we
Rishi,
talked about when we got on?
Rishi.
I asked what your cat's
Yeah.
name was.
Tell him I
didn't
love
know
him.
that, yeah. So
I've got two, but the one that was keeping me company's name is Ninja. That's
actually, I
your
remember
name?
you did say it at the beginning, yes.
Which tells me you're a fan of the Wu-Tang Clan.
No, my husband is, but no, I don't even know why I named her that, but it's funny because it turned out she actually is quite acrobatic despite her healthy pudge amounts or unhealthy pudge amounts. Okay, so thank you for asking about my kitty cat Homeo. And finally, this is the last question. Anna, how did you go about giving a voice to Adol? He's a semi-silent character. So what was your strategy for giving him dialogue?
Yeah, right. So that's a question that actually comes up a lot, and even Mr. Kondo, when he was talking about my book, he said that this is one of the things he wondered the most about when the book was still being written. I felt like, when I got, so my first step, was to understand Adol as a person. And I think the way they show Adol in this game, you kind of have no question. So there's a situation, you know what Adol is going to do exactly. You know what he would never do also. There are actually some surprising episodes in East 1 and 2 where he does things that he doesn't go in character, but that's a separate thing. Yeah, so when you know that, kind of giving him a voice is easy because you have this person you understand, so you're in his head. So then you put him in a situation, and then kind of you watch what he's going to say, and then you write it down. So it was kind of like, to me, Adol became a real person for this process of writing. And then after this, everything he says or doesn't say is natural. So it kind of, And I think it feels very rewarding because everybody who read the book so far comment on how Adol's character is exactly in line with what they imagined. So I feel like I kind of understood him, and I think I know what he would never do and what he would do. Actually, there's a scene in the game where Adol and Laxia first meet is actually not in the scene we just heard, but it's on the ship. And in the ship, Adol is allowed to go around and interact with pretty much every character, which will be in the game later. And at some point, he walks into a cabin, and Laxia is in there, kind of being upset about France and saying some upset things. So I chose to show this scene as their first meeting. So by the time the scene happens on the beach, which we just heard, they already met each other, and I think Laxia refers to it. And this meeting was also kind of very enjoyable to write because it's kind of, they say funny things to each other, and then it just kind of, so Laxia is very confrontational, of course, and Adol was trying to help, but it just kind of, once you get into the character, it's so natural. So, yeah.
Can I ask a little follow-up question for that of you, Anna?
Yeah.
What, when you were writing Adol, what would you say you thought was the most defining feature of that character?
Well, so he is extremely wholesome and balanced, and I think it comes from, he knows, so he has kind of a purpose in life, so he knows what he wants, so he kind of has like inside himself, he's very comfortable with himself, and then at the same time he is very I mean, he's kind and he genuinely wants to do good for other people. He's very compassionate, but it's kind of, it comes from just a very wholesome place. I don't know, the word wholesome also comes up a lot when I talk about Adol.
No, that's it. Definitely fits.
Yeah. And
Okay,
I mean, on
thank
top
you.
of that, yeah, he can have like, he can be goofy, he can be like, you know,
He's
sometimes
well, one of
blushes
my,
a
actually,
lot.
well, just a quick aside, one of my favorite things in like in Celceta is the fact that whenever you're asked those various questions, or like in East Celceta or 8 or 9, you get two options, and they don't actually change the story at all. But one of them always kind of shows that he has a propensity to be a smartass. And
Yeah,
I really like that side of him. Just like
yeah.
he just especially like when he's talking with Dogi and stuff. It's like he likes to mess, like just the idea like he likes to mess with Dogi. Like I'm
Yeah,
going to do the right
that's
thing,
like,
but I'm
that's
gonna
where
get in
doggy is
trouble.
amazing, because yeah, they just bounce off each other. That's
Yeah.
In Silseta,
Awesome.
actually, there's no doggy, but this character feels similar to doggy, right?
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, Durin. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, he's
So
not
to me,
Dogi.
right. But yeah, it's like,
Yeah.
yeah. So when doggy is
He's
around, they start
semi-Dogi.
joking.
Yes.
I think, yeah, that's what one thing probably we like about doggy, because he shows off the goofy side of Adol. So when they're together, they become goofy, and that's
It sounds
Yeah.
like a really genuine friendship, just from what I'm hearing
Yeah.
from you guys, or
Oh,
a
yeah.
genuine seeming friendship. Because
Yeah.
I mean, it just feels like whoever wrote that character initially, or I guess as the character became fleshed out, really had some friends.
Yeah.
Right. But I think it really shows through that. So the Falcom team who developed these characters in this game, they really care. So they care very deeply about these characters. So everyone is kind of a real person to them. So kind of,
really
all
great.
this love really comes through, and that's what makes it easy. As an author,
Well,
you just kind of write it down.
you have all convinced me to certainly play the game. I'm already gonna read the book. I mean, I mean, obviously, but yeah. Anyway, this is cool. So that's actually the end of the questions, and it's the end of our panel.
Can I
Oh,
unmute
on,
one
of course.
person from the audience before we...
Certainly.
Okay. If
you can. Oh, it's Barney.
Barney, yeah. If Barney, if he's like putting person on the spot, like to talk about putting on the spot. So yeah.
I just want to see some sword fights, honestly.
Okay, Barney, if you don't want to be on the panel, I'm sorry.
I'm attempting to do this thing.
Okay,
Oh, there you are.
I didn't really ask Barney. I just like did this. Right? So, yeah. So Bernie is, by the way, the one who read the scene we just heard and said, why don't you have Adol and Lexia meet on the ship? And then kind of, so the way it inspired me to write this extra scene, which I think really worked for me. So kind of, Bernie did things like this. Bernie is responsible for a couple of key fight scenes in the game, because he felt like I didn't show enough danger and enough fighting. So we added monster fights where people actually get hurt. Because so in the game, you you get hurt, you take a potion and you're fine. You're like, good, you go to the nearest like monument and you heal yourself. So in real life, hi Bernie, okay.
Hey,
there he is.
I figured out how to turn the video on.
Yeah. Great, yeah. So this is
Well
Bernie,
done.
everyone. Yeah. So I don't know if you want to say anything about like how difficult it was. Yeah, but
it was really fascinating to see, the transformation of the book from, first draft to what it's become.
Yeah.
It was interesting to see, so the first draft was really more like a playthrough. And
you guessed, right?
and there's a certain point where you have to say, okay, well, this is really interesting when you're trying to figure out this puzzle or trying to, defeat, this set of monsters or whatever. But as, as prose, it doesn't really work. So
yeah, Bernie,
certain things you just kind of have to shorthand and get into what is important to the characters as opposed to the mechanics of a game.
Yeah.
Awesome. Well, thank you for joining us, however briefly, Bernie. It's
Yeah.
good to
Sure.
see you. Awesome
Bernie
beard, by
also
the way.
would
I
be
dig it.
discussing. Yeah. Bernie is a very talented author, so his book is going to come out from Dragonwell hopefully next year. It's
Oh,
it's an
Nice.
amazing book. I'm
right.
crying when I'm reading it and
If
laughing.
we can ever figure out a title for it.
Yeah, right. It doesn't have a title yet, so it does everything
Get
else.
there.
Yeah, right. And yeah, Bernie
Very
is also the
cool.
one who explained to me how to defend against a rapier with a broken broadsword. So it's gonna be... And Bernie is the
Well
one
done.
who takes the picture from the game and saying, "What do you call this sword?" And Bernie will know everything about all of it.
That's awesome.
It's
That's
like
awesome.
really
We
helpful.
need we need we need sword guys. Like it's an important thing.
Absolutely.
Yeah, right. Yeah,
Yeah, we
without Bernie,
definitely
it
need to
wouldn't
have people who know how to stab people.
Yeah, right.
No, you're
Very
not someone who
important.
knows how to stab someone. You're a subject matter expert.
Yes.
There you go. There you go.
As we say at work.
I like it.
So
Yep.
yeah, talking about Adolf's personality, right? Stabbing people. Okay.
All
Yeah.
right. Well, anyway, it's been a little over 2 hours, so I think we're pretty much wrapped up. We've got all the
Okay.
questions answered.
Mhm.
So I just want to thank everybody on the panel, Anna, Limpanit, Kaylin, Jeff, and now Bernie, our brand new panel member. It's been such a good time. I've learned so much, and I'm glad we got to answer all the questions. So I guess that's it.
Yeah.
Good night, everybody.
Yeah, thank
Well,
you all
thank-
so much. Thanks everyone for coming, and thank you
Yeah.
guys so much for being on
Yeah.
the panel.
Thank you for inviting me. It's been a pleasure.
Been a
Yes,
great
for having
audience,
me. This is
too.
Thank
great.
you.
It really made for a very
Yeah.
special party because a book release day is actually an unnerving event. I mean, it's happy, but it's nerve-wracking, and having friends
I can
talk to you.
tell you did a great job.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Awesome.
it just felt very special to have this group of people to share it with. So yeah, thank you.
I'm glad to be here. It's a privilege.
So thank you.
So-
Thanks, everyone.
I guess that's it. Yeah, it's the awkward part of now end it. So I guess just go ahead and stop recording.